social innovation isn't just about having cool ideas, nor is it just about technology. It's about being human. So what exactly does this mean? Basically, innovation starts from within you. It starts with I. So basically, empathy is the driver of innovation. It's what drives the impact. But how can we empathize with others if we don't know how to empathize with ourselves first? So it's really important that we're able to step into our own shoes, take a deeper step within our own shoes first before we can really relate and empathize with others. So we have to think, how does this connect with our own lives, our own journey or story? We must be able to empathize with ourselves first. And when we do that, we have more confidence. And when we have that confidence in our being, that's what really opens doors for us. That allows us to be higher impact leaders. Imagine you wake up one morning and you're forced to flee your home. My parents had to flee East Africa in the 1970s and start a new life in London and then in Canada. I myself was displaced and had to experience, starting over again and not having a home. There are over 67 million refugees in the world, and that number has doubled since 10 years ago. Most of these refugees are in developing countries, especially in Africa. And they lack access to water, they barely have electricity, they face food insecurity, they don't have electricity for the most part, most of them are unemployed, and a big chunk of those unemployed are the women and the youth. But the good thing about them is that they're amazingly resilient. We like to call them the Wonder People. And it's amazing how creative and entrepreneurial they are, how they're able to create things from almost nothing. So who knew that, putting together refugees and an amazing solution like hydroponics, which is basically growing food, nutritious produce, which you can create in the desert with no soil, 90% less water than traditional agriculture, using a pump, a solar panel, a few materials, recycled materials like PVC pipes, very simple things, could actually allow them to grow nutritious food in the desert. So sometimes it's not about inventing new ideas. Social innovation isn't always about inventing new ideas or coming up with the next big thing. How can we really use different things that already exist and put them together in new ways? How can we go beyond our comfort zone and collaborate with other industries? For example, I'm not an agronomist by any means. I'm a foodie and I'm a fast learner. I didn't know much about agriculture, but I got out of my comfort zone and saw that there's this potential to take something that we see high tech here in the States or in Western countries and adapt it to the local context to be able to feed the refugees. And in fact, a lot of the refugees had agriculture experience in their home country, so it actually wasn't that difficult to train them to use these new technologies and adapt them to their local context. So as leaders, it's much easier to make that impact when we can relate to others. For me, I could relate to the refugees after having lost my home. And so I felt really passionate about doing that work. So when we have empathy, we're able to be resilient. When we fall down, we're able to get back up again. Have you ever felt like your life seemed perfectly fine, or almost perfectly fine? Things generally went well, and then all of a sudden, boom, everything falls apart, things hit the fan. Anyone experience that? Yeah. Me, especially being a recovering perfectionist, it was really challenging. For the most part, I had a lot of things go my way, and then a couple years ago, it just was like one thing after the other, not just my home, having lost clients, my jobs, my stepsister passed away. My relationship was like rocky. It was just a terrible time for me. And I was like, when is this gonna end? When is that light in the tunnel finally gonna shine again? When is this gonna be over? but it was actually an opportunity to redesign my life. So when things happen like that, it's important to see it as an opportunity. When things fall apart, it's an opportunity to redesign your life in some way. It's hard to see that sometimes when we're going through that, but looking back, you can actually see that that was meant to happen for a reason, and that that's an opportunity to redesign your life. So basically, when I didn't have my home, I went around the world, I traveled, and I did a lot of soul searching. I was like, well, you know, I don't have a home, I might as well take this opportunity to do some soul searching. I went to India, I went to Bali. I did all the meditation, the yoga, the Ayurveda. I visited different ashrams. I was trying to find myself. But the surprising thing is, I actually came back after that journey with more questions than answers. I had expected to get all these answers. I was like, oh, I'll figure this out when I travel. I came back more confused. I tried to make this move to California, and that never happened. I came back to DC, and I'm so happy I did. But, you know, it was like all these expectations that I had. I realized that it's not really great to have expectations. It's good to have goals. But it's important to be open to what's going to come your way when you're going through a transformation like that. And so, it's important to be really resilient. Another thing is, the lesson that I learned was to follow your gut. When I was in graduate school, I went to see a career counselor when I was looking for a job. And I had never really had a real job. I had, you know, at that time I had launched Brazil's top-rated and largest Portuguese school that was financing an orphanage. I had done a lot of other cool things. I had started and actually sold a translation business and an e-commerce website. But none of that really mattered to me because I was surrounded by classmates that had all this other, you know, work experience, and I was just like, wow, I don't have any of that job experience, and now I've come to study economics, and I had to be this economist. And funny enough, my career counselor had told me, no employer is gonna wanna hire an entrepreneur. So take off entrepreneur, take off founder from your resume, and change that to freelance writer or translator. And I listened to her. That was the worst piece of advice I've gotten, but I listened to her. And so I took that off. I put freelance writer and translator. I did get the job, which was great, but I ended up doing years of work that just felt really misaligned. It just felt like I wasn't being myself, and I just felt so disconnected. I was like doing this daily grind, going to work, doing this 9 to 5, which, you know, for some people it's great, but for me, it was just doing something that I was not excited to go into work every day. I was just trying to get in before the attendance lady was there so she could check off that I was there. It was, you know, arriving at this time and then leaving, and I just felt like I was doing something and I wasn't able to have the impact I wanted to make. Yeah, I was doing cool work internationally, but like I just felt so disconnected from the beneficiaries, from the people that most needed our support. And so when I did that transformation process, it really took me through this boom, 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 like all these steps, because I was stuck in that job, I was stuck doing all this misaligned work, I wasn't making that step to get out. And so all these things started happening, and I eventually had to, you know, come to that point and was like, you know, I need to really follow my intuition, follow my gut. And which, like I said earlier, was so much easier to do in Brazil or like when I was younger. But when I'd gone through so much, you know, graduate school and doing all this misaligned work, I ended up in this analysis paralysis. How many of you experienced that? Sure, you can relate to that. And so, basically, we have to realize that, you know, sometimes our mind is taking over our heart, and our intuition sits within our heart. And we have to kind of go through this process of unlearning everything that we've conditioned ourselves to. And that can be really challenging because we're, you know, battling with our ego. We also have to be careful not to be too, you know, I mean, it's important to follow your heart, but we have to find a way that it's balanced, that our intuition, we have to allow our, you know, follow our gut feeling, but obviously it has to, a little bit of logic is important too. And so, our Leadership Institute, actually going through that process has allowed me to redesign my life and my career in a way that feels really aligned. And I actually dedicate my work today towards training other leaders in emotional intelligence, because I realized how important it was to me after working so many years, doing all this misaligned work, working in environments where I saw that, my managers, my leaders just couldn't relate to me, and I felt like, I wanted to help improve, especially people that, were super technical or analytical, and yeah, they had, great education, great skills, great technical skills, but they couldn't really relate to us as their employees, or it just felt so disconnected. And people skills, I realized how important they were, and I wanted to bring that to organizations. And so that's what our organization does today, is train leaders in those lessons that I've learned, which after doing a lot of research and reflection, we came up with, these 4 traits of high impact leaders, which are perception, empathy, intuition, and resilience. And it basically fits around a model of emotional intelligence. So my point is, don't make things so complicated. If you want to start something, and it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur, an innovator, if you're a manager, whatever your position or role is, when you want to innovate, it actually isn't just about looking for the next big idea. I spent a lot of time, on Google researching what's the next thing to invest in, what's the next thing that I need to get into. I don't know how to code. Is that going to affect me? I'm not that techie. I tried to be techie. And then I realized, it's not about that. It's about being human, because innovation starts from within. Your presence is your impact. Thank you.